The NHL has changed dramatically over the last few decades. Once characterized by fights, massive hits, and enforcers, today's game feels almost unrecognizable to those who grew up watching hockey in the 1980s or even the early 2000s. Whilst the skill ceiling has increased, with generational talent taking center stage, the physicality that once defined the game has steadily diminished. And with more and more players leaving themselves vulnerable and the role of NHL enforcers seemingly going extinct, it raises the question, has the NHL become too soft, and is it ultimately for the better? Let's start with one of the most obvious signs of the NHL's changing identity, the decline in fighting. Fighting has been a hallmark of hockey for over a century. For decades, enforcers, the big physical players whose primary job was to protect their teammates and engage in fights, were staples of NHL rosters. Enforcers play a pivotal part in a team. The game is intense and emotional. Dirty plays and conflicts among players often escalate into fights. These altercations can benefit a team by boosting morale and shifting momentum in their favor during the game. Fighting can serve as a means to maintain control during a game. A controlled, respectful fight can often prevent the game from spiraling into chaos or escalating into a full-blown brawl. By addressing tensions on the ice, a fight can resolve issues and allow the game to continue without further incidents. However, as the NHL has shifted toward a faster, more skill-oriented game, with teams fielding 4 lines of skilled players, fighting and the role of the enforcer has basically gone extinct. Coaches favor more skilled, fast players who can contribute offensively and defensively rather than relying on physical intimidation. This shift has led to a more dynamic and entertaining style of play, with games now often decided by speed, precision passing, and creativity rather than brute force or physical dominance. The league has contributed to this trend through rule changes and stricter penalties, reducing the need for enforcers and allowing their role to fade. In the 2001 to 2002 season, there were a staggering 803 fights in the NHL, according to hockeyfights.com. That's an average of 0.65 fights per game. Compare that to the 2022 to 23 season, which saw just 334 fights, an average of 0.26 fights per game. This steady decline in fighting has been ongoing for over a decade. In fact, during the 2018-19 season, fewer than 200 games featured a fight, marking a historic low for the league. However, the decline in fighting has been evident for years, with each season seeing fewer and fewer fights. The primary driver behind these rule changes and stricter enforcement is player safety, particularly in reducing the risk of concussions and other serious head injuries. Enforcers, and really anyone who engages in fighting, expose themselves to significant risk of head trauma. Repeated blows to the head can result in serious, immediate, or long-term health consequences. A good example of this is Adam Deadmarsh. On November 1st, 2000, during a game between the Colorado Avalanche and the Vancouver Canucks, Adam Deadmarsh engaged in a fight with Ed Jovanovski. Early in the altercation, Jovanovski delivered 2 powerful punches that left Deadmarsh visibly dazed, requiring immediate attention from the team's trainer. This incident is considered a pivotal moment in Deadmarsh's career. Although he continued to play effectively afterward, the concussion he sustained during this fight marked the beginning of ongoing health challenges. He later developed post-concussion syndrome, which ultimately led to his retirement in 2005. There are many such stories of careers being cut short because of concussions. Even Sidney Crosby has been affected by this, but it wasn't due to fighting. Sidney Crosby's head injury during the 2011 NHL Winter Classic on January 1st, 2011, marked a pivotal and troubling moment in his career and the NHL's handling of concussions and hits. At the time, Crosby was in the midst of a career-defining season, dominating the league with 32 goals and 66 points in just 41 games. He was on pace for a historic 64-goal, 132-point season, numbers that were extraordinary in the era of low-scoring, defensive-minded hockey. During the Winter Classic, an outdoor game between Crosby's Pittsburgh Penguins and Alex Ovechkin's Washington Capitals, Crosby was skating up the ice when he was inadvertently hit by Washington Capitals forward David Steckel. Steckel, who did not get a penalty on the play, collided with Crosby's head, sending him sprawling to the ice. Crosby appeared dazed and shaken, but managed to get up and finish the period. At the time, the NHL had no concussion spotters or formal protocols to assess head injuries, and Crosby returned to play the third period, logging nearly 25 minutes of ice time in the game. Just 4 days later, on January 5th, 2011, Crosby took another hard hit, this time from Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman Victor Hedman. The hit drove Crosby into the boards, and though it seemed less severe than the Steckel collision, it exacerbated the damage from the initial hit. Shortly after, Crosby was diagnosed with a concussion. Initially, the injury was described as mild, but Crosby himself famously remarked that he didn't believe there was such a thing as a mild concussion. This would prove tragically accurate, as his recovery dragged on far longer than anyone anticipated. Crosby's concussion symptoms were severe and persistent. He experienced headaches, dizziness, and sensitivity to light and noise. There were days when he felt fine and dominated in practice, only to be struck by debilitating symptoms the next day. This cycle of progress and setbacks made it impossible for him to return to the ice. The uncertainty surrounding his recovery led to widespread speculation about his future in the NHL. At just 23 years old, Crosby was facing the possibility of early retirement, a devastating turn of events for a player who was not only the face of the NHL, but also in the prime of his career. Crosby's injury highlighted the NHL's long-standing issues with handling concussions. For years, the league and its teams had downplayed the severity of head injuries, often encouraging players to play through it. Stars like Eric Lindros and Paul Kariya had their careers cut short due to mismanaged concussions, and Crosby's case brought renewed attention to the dangers of head trauma in hockey. But this injury caused another issue to be highlighted in the hockey world: head hits, especially dirty head hits. While some argue that the Steckel hit on Crosby was legal and accidental, many, including myself, view it as a dirty play. Head hits occur when a player makes contact with another player's head during play. These hits can range from incidental contact to deliberate targeting of the head. Some result from clean body checks that inadvertently involve the head, while others stem from illegal actions such as elbows, blindside hits, or high sticks. Regardless of intent, the impact of these hits can be devastating. Repeated head impacts can lead to concussions, which are traumatic brain injuries that can cause symptoms like headaches, dizziness, memory loss, and sensitivity to light. More alarmingly, long-term exposure to head trauma has been linked to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. To address head hits, the NHL introduced Rule 48 in the 2010-11 season. Initially, the rule targeted lateral or blindside hits where the head was the principal point of contact. Over time, it was expanded to cover all hits where the head is the primary point of contact, regardless of the angle. Head hits, whether intentional or accidental, are incredibly dangerous and can be career-ending. Sidney Crosby, reflecting on his own experience, emphasizing, "It's really tough to decide whether he meant to or didn't mean to. I felt like he could have got out of the way or avoid me. Whether he tried to hurt me, only he knows. I guess we'll never know that." The decrease in hits and physicality in hockey has brought about a new challenge. During the 1990s and early 2000s, players watched a game defined by hard hits and physical battles. As a result, they learned early on how to protect themselves. Players understood the importance of keeping their heads up and avoiding dangerous positions, such as skating through the neutral zone with their heads down or turning their backs to an oncoming forechecker. In contrast, today's younger players are developing in an era where the focus has shifted towards speed and raw talent, with less emphasis on physicality. This evolution has left many players unprepared for the realities of physical contact at the professional level. While these players excel in skill in skating, they often lack the instincts to anticipate and brace for hits, putting themselves in vulnerable positions. A significant issue is the declining emphasis on teaching situational awareness at a young age. In previous generations, players were trained to be mindful of their surroundings and expect contact, but with hitting being introduced later in youth hockey, often not until age 13 or 15 in places like Canada, this skill is no longer developed as early. While delaying body checking may reduce injuries during childhood, it creates a paradox. Players are either exposed to risks early on or face greater challenges adapting to physicality in their professional careers. This lack of early preparation is evident in how players handle pressure in-game. along the boards and in open ice, they often fail to move the puck quickly or turn their backs to pressure, assuming they won't be hit. This leaves them exposed to awkward collisions and dangerous situations, highlighting the unintended consequences of reducing physicality in hockey's developmental stages. With the enforcer role diminishing from the league, there has been an increase in teams not protecting their teammates. As mentioned before, enforcers were the players who policed the ice, ensuring that opponents were held accountable for targeting star players or playing overly physical. As the NHL shifts towards a faster and more skill-based game, the decline of enforcers and physical players has contributed to notable instances where teams failed to defend their teammates, leading to criticism and concerns about team cohesion and player safety. In October 2024, the New Jersey Devils faced scrutiny for failing to protect their star players during critical moments. Jack Hughes was targeted by Islanders defenseman Alexander Romanov, followed by Jesper Bratt, enduring a significant hit from Lightning defenseman Eric Cernak. The lack of response from the Devils players drew attention, with critics questioning the team's commitment to safeguarding its core players and maintaining team unity. There are other instances with teams such as the Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs failing to defend their players, further emphasizing this growing trend in the NHL. So, has the NHL become too soft? The answer largely depends on one's perspective. On one hand, the league has taken meaningful steps to prioritize player safety and reduce career-ending injuries. These changes have fostered a faster, more skill-driven game that showcases incredible talent and athleticism. On the other hand, the decline in physicality has significantly altered the game's identity. Without enforcers to ensure accountability, some players now take risks they might have avoided in the past, while others lack the situational awareness to protect themselves, leading to more vulnerable and injury-prone moments. The NHL is navigating a transition between two distinct eras. While the modern game thrives on speed, creativity, and precision, it risks losing the toughness and physical edge that once defined hockey. The decline of enforcers in fighting has reduced the sense of immediate accountability on the ice and diminished some of the raw intensity that fueled rivalries and team cohesion in previous generations. The steady reduction in fighting and physical intimidation has also created new dynamics. Teams that fail to defend their players in critical moments face criticism, highlighting the importance of unity and protection within the game. At the same time, the lack of physical deterrence has led to questions about whether the league is still striking the right balance between skill and grit. Ultimately, the NHL's evolution has brought both benefits and challenges. While player safety is rightly prioritized, this focus has come at the expense of some traditional elements of the sport. The key question moving forward is whether the league can maintain the captivating speed and finesse of the modern game while preserving the grit, accountability that makes hockey unique.